I never thought my wife was capable of cheating. Vanessa and I had been together for 10 years, married for 7. We had built a life together, shared dreams, and planned a future that I thought was unshakable. That belief shattered the night I found her notebook. It was supposed to be an ordinary evening. She had already gone to bed, exhausted from a supposed long day at work, and I was downstairs finishing a report for my job. My phone had died, and I needed a charger. Vanessa had several in her nightstand, so I quietly slipped into our bedroom, making sure not to wake her. As I opened the drawer, my fingers brushed against something unexpected. A black leather notebook, thick, well-worn, and tucked between a pile of books. I don't know why I pulled it out, but something inside me told me to. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the slight paranoia I had been feeling for the past few months. Whatever it was, that decision changed everything. At first, I thought it was just a journal, maybe a place where she wrote down personal thoughts. But the moment I opened it, my breath caught in my throat. The first page had a title, written neatly in blue ink, "The Rules of the Game." Below it, a list of instructions followed. Keep the affair secret for as long as possible. Never leave a digital trail. Delete texts, emails, and call logs immediately. If confronted, deny, then gaslight. Never admit to anything unless caught red-handed. Never sleep with the same person for more than 6 months. Keep things fresh. The winner is the one who keeps their affair hidden the longest. I felt my stomach twist. I flipped the page and found a scoreboard. Names, dates, locations. Every man she had been with, neatly documented, as if she was keeping track of achievements. My hands started shaking as I read through the names. Some I recognized. Michael, our neighbor. Ethan, a coworker she had mentioned once. Liam, an old college friend she had sworn was just a friend. I turned another page. There were dates going back nearly 4 years. For years. That meant this had been happening for more than half our marriage. She had been lying to my face, going on work trips, late meetings, girls' nights, while she was sneaking off to see them. And she wasn't just cheating. She was playing a game with it. A sick, twisted competition where the goal was to get away with it for as long as possible. I clenched my jaw as I reached the latest entry, dated 2 nights ago. Ryan, new, co-worker, promising. No suspicion yet. My vision blurred for a second. 2 nights ago, she had come home late, claiming her boss had kept her working overtime. She had kissed me goodnight, told me she loved me. And then, she had written in her damn journal about how she was deceiving me. I closed the notebook and sat down on the edge of the bed, trying to steady my breathing. My wife wasn't just having an affair. She was methodically planning every move, keeping score like it was some kind of sport. My first instinct was to wake her up, throw the notebook in her face, and demand an explanation. But then I stopped myself. If she was this careful, this manipulative, she wouldn't break that easily. She would deny, twist the truth, and gaslight me into thinking I was the crazy one. That was part of her strategy. I needed proof. More than just a notebook. I needed undeniable, inescapable proof. I placed the notebook back exactly where I had found it, took my charger, and left the room. The moment I closed the door behind me, I felt like I was suffocating. I walked to the kitchen, poured myself a drink, and sat down at the table, trying to process what I had just read. Had she ever loved me? Or was our entire marriage just part of her game? I thought about every time I had trusted her, defended her, every time she had come home smiling, acting like she was happy. How many times had she come home to me right after being with another man? The realization sent a wave of nausea through me, but I forced myself to stay focused. I had a choice. I could confront her now and let her manipulate the situation, or I could play along and destroy her from the inside. I wasn't about to let her walk away from this unscathed. If she thought she was playing a game, then fine. I would play too. But I wasn't just going to beat her. I was going to rewrite the rules. I spent the rest of the night awake, planning. First, I needed to clone her phone. If she was deleting messages, I needed a way to retrieve them. A simple app would let me sync her texts and calls to my laptop without her knowing. Second, I needed to track her movements. I ordered a small GPS tracker online and planned to place it in her car. And third, I needed evidence. Photos, timestamps, messages, Anything that would make it impossible for her to talk her way out of it when the time came. By morning, my plan was set. Vanessa woke up as if nothing was wrong. She smiled at me, kissed my cheek, and stretched. "Morning, babe," she said, yawning. "Sleep okay?" I forced a smile. "Yeah. You?" She nodded, running a hand through her hair. "Yeah. Just tired. Work has been killing me lately." Liar. I sipped my coffee, watching her. "Busy again today?" She sighed, shaking her head. "Yeah. I might have to stay late again." Another lie. She thought she was winning. She had no idea that I had already read her playbook. I leaned in and kissed her forehead. "Don't work too hard." She smiled, completely unaware that her entire world was about to collapse. I woke up the next morning with a clear head and a plan. The shock had worn off. The rage, though still there, was under control. I wasn't going to lash out, and I wasn't going to let emotions dictate my next move. This was no longer about heartbreak. It was about strategy. Vanessa thought she was playing a game, but she had no idea that I had read the rulebook. She had spent years perfecting her deception, believing she had mastered the art of lying without getting caught. But I had the one thing she didn't expect: knowledge. I moved carefully. I couldn't let her suspect anything, not yet. If she thought for even a second that I was onto her, she would change her tactics, delete evidence, and manipulate the situation. I needed her to believe she was still in control. That meant keeping my routine the same, waking up at the same time, eating breakfast together, kissing her goodbye like everything was normal. I had to make sure my behavior didn't change. She couldn't sense the shift. While she was in the shower, I took the first step. I had already installed a phone cloning app the night before, and all I needed was 60 seconds with her phone to activate it. I picked it up from the nightstand, unlocked it using the passcode I had memorized long ago, and completed the sync. Now, every text, call, and location update would be mirrored to my laptop. I placed the phone back exactly where it had been and walked out of the bedroom before she came out. Step 1. Complete. The second step was tracking her movements. I had ordered a GPS tracker late last night, and with expedited shipping, it would arrive in a few hours. When it did, I would discreetly place it in her car, ensuring I knew exactly where she went every time she left the house. There would be no excuses, no room for lies. Every late night at work and last-minute errand would be tracked. Step 2. In progress. I sat at the kitchen table, sipping my coffee as Vanessa walked in, her hair still damp, dressed for the day. "You're up early," she said, smiling as she kissed me on the cheek. "Yeah," I said casually. "Had some work emails to go through." She grabbed a piece of toast, biting into it as she checked her phone. I knew she was looking for messages from Ryan, the latest addition to her little game. I pretended not to notice. "Busy day?" I asked, stirring my coffee. She sighed, rubbing her temple. "Yeah, I might have to stay late again. My boss is killing me this week." Liar. I had read the latest journal entry last night. She wasn't going to work late. She was meeting Ryan at a hotel downtown. It was their second time there, and she had given herself high marks in her little rating system. I forced a smile. "That sucks. I'll have dinner ready when you get home." She looked at me, almost hesitating for a second before nodding. "You're the best." If only she knew. Vanessa left the house at exactly 7:45 a.m. I watched from the window as she drove away, then pulled out my laptop and checked the phone sync. Her most recent text was exactly what I expected. "Ryan, can't wait to see you tonight." "Same time?" "Vanessa, of course. I'll text when I'm on my way." I clenched my jaw but forced myself to stay calm. I needed to let this play out. The longer I waited, the more evidence I would have. I checked my email. My GPS tracker had arrived at the local pickup point. I drove there immediately and retrieved it, carefully unboxing it in the car. It was small, no larger than a matchbox, and would be easy to conceal. I waited for her lunch break. Vanessa always came home around noon to grab a snack before heading back to work. It was the perfect opportunity. Sure enough, at exactly 12:15 p.m., she pulled into the driveway, came inside, and grabbed a protein bar from the kitchen. "Hey, babe," she said, flashing a smile. "Just grabbing something quick." I smiled back. "Busy day?" "The worst." She sighed, rolling her eyes. Another lie. She was home for exactly 4 minutes before heading back out. The moment she left, I walked outside and placed the tracker inside the wheel well of her car, making sure it was secure but completely hidden. Step 2. Complete. Now, all I had to do was wait. At 5:30 p.m., I got the first GPS alert. She wasn't at work. She had driven across town and parked at a hotel, the same one mentioned in her notebook. I sat at the dining table, drinking a beer, watching her little dots move on the map. She stayed in the hotel for an hour and 32 minutes. Then, she drove home, like nothing had happened. When she walked through the front door at 7:15 p.m., I greeted her with a warm smile. "Hey, you're home early," she sighed, dropping her bag on the counter. "Yeah, my boss let me leave a little early." I took a sip of my beer. "That's nice of him." She smiled, walking over and kissing my cheek. "You're the best for making dinner." If only she knew. I watched her eat, acting like nothing was wrong. She laughed at the TV, told me about her stressful day, and kissed me again before heading upstairs to shower. I knew exactly where she had been, who she had been with, and exactly how long they had been together. And she had no idea. I poured myself another drink, staring at my laptop screen, watching as the text notifications popped up. "Ryan, tonight was amazing." "Vanessa, it really was. Can't wait for next time." I exhaled slowly, my grip tightening around the glass. She thought she was winning, but she had no idea I had already rewritten the rules. I had every piece in place now. The phone sync was working flawlessly, recording every text, call, and email. The GPS tracker in her car showed me everywhere she went. I had a front row seat to my wife's deception, watching as she carefully juggled 2 lives, one with me and one with Ryan. She thought she was the master of lies, the one in control. What she didn't know was that I was tracking her every move, letting her dig her own grave one message at a time. Vanessa had settled into a pattern. She would leave for work in the morning like normal, texting me casually throughout the day. Small updates, things a loving wife would say. "Hope your morning's going okay. Work is killing me today. Don't forget to take the chicken out of the freezer. Love you." Each message was a reminder of how easily she could lie. At the same time, I saw the real messages, the ones she sent to Ryan. "Thinking about last night. You were amazing. I hate that I have to sit in meetings when all I want is to be with you. Same time Thursday?" Every text, every plan she made, every time she laughed at one of my messages while secretly texting him, it only fueled my patience. I could have confronted her immediately, but what would be the point? She'd lie, twist the story, and try to manipulate me. No, I needed her to believe she was safe. I needed her to think she was still winning. Thursday, 6:45 p.m. Vanessa had claimed she would be working late again. I knew better. I had the GPS open on my phone, watching as her little dot moved toward the hotel. I was already waiting outside when she arrived. I had parked across the street, watching from a distance as her car pulled into the lot. She sat there for a few minutes, probably fixing her makeup, making sure she looked perfect before stepping inside. She didn't even check her surroundings. 5 minutes later, Ryan arrived. A black sedan, tinted windows. He parked 2 spaces away from her, got out, and walked straight to her car. She smiled at him, said something I couldn't hear, then got out and followed him inside. I stayed in my car, gripping the steering wheel, my pulse steady. I could go in right now, bust through the door, throw the evidence in their faces, and watch them scramble for excuses. But that wasn't enough. I needed more. So I waited. 1 hour. 2. At exactly 9:27 p.m., Vanessa left the hotel, fixing her hair as she walked to her car. She pulled out her phone, likely texting Ryan one last time before driving home. I checked the sync. "Can't stop thinking about you. Miss you already. Sleep well, babe." She sent that last one just 5 minutes before walking through our front door, kissing me on the cheek, and telling me she was exhausted from work. I kissed her back. I had everything I needed. The next day, I went to work like nothing had changed. I had a meeting with a divorce attorney scheduled for the following week. But first, I needed to put the final phase of my plan into motion. I was done collecting evidence. Now, I was going to use it. Vanessa had told me she had plans with her best friend, Emily, that night. A girls' night. She had even been extra affectionate that morning, as if to make sure I wouldn't suspect anything. But Emily was already in on my plan. I had met with her 2 days ago. She had been suspicious of Vanessa's behavior for months, but had never wanted to interfere. But once I showed her the proof, the texts, the hotel visits, the notebook she had been keeping, she was furious. Vanessa had been lying to everyone, not just me. So we made a deal. Emily would tell Vanessa that she couldn't make it last minute. That way, Vanessa would have no excuse when I exposed her. I sat on the couch, pretending to watch TV, waiting for her to make the next move. Sure enough, at 6:30 p.m., she walked into the room, fixing her earrings. "Hey, babe," she said casually. "I'm heading out in a bit." I played dumb. "Girls' night?" She nodded, grabbing her purse. "Yeah, Emily's already at the bar. Should be fun." I stared at her for a second, letting the silence stretch just enough to make her uncomfortable. Then I smiled. "Have fun." She smiled back, kissed me, and walked out the door. I opened my phone and watched as the GPS tracker updated. She wasn't going to the bar. She was driving straight to him. I followed her. I stayed a few cars back, making sure not to get too close. But I didn't need to be discreet. Vanessa was so confident, so sure of herself, that she didn't even check to see if anyone was behind her. She was too focused on Ryan. I parked across the street from his house. She got out of her car, texted him, then walked up to the front door. It opened immediately. She went inside. I exhaled slowly, my grip tightening around my phone. Now it was time. I had already sent everything to Ryan's wife. Every text, every call log, every photo of him meeting Vanessa at the hotel. She had called me an hour ago, furious. She was already on her way. This was about to get messy. I stayed in my car, waiting, watching, my pulse steady. 5 minutes later, another car pulled up. Ryan's wife got out. She was holding a folder filled with everything. She marched up to the door and knocked, loud, forceful. Inside, the lights flicked on. Shadows moved past the windows. I smiled. The game was over. Vanessa just didn't know it yet. I watched from my car as Ryan's wife stood at the doorstep, gripping the folder filled with undeniable proof. Inside, Vanessa had no idea what was about to happen. She was likely in his arms, laughing, maybe even kissing him, still believing that she was playing her game undetected. But the game was over. The door opened. Ryan appeared first, confused at the sight of his wife standing there, her expression cold and unreadable. He said something I couldn't hear, but she ignored him, shoving the folder against his chest. I could tell the moment he realized what was happening. His body stiffened, and he glanced over his shoulder. Then Vanessa stepped into view. Even from my car, I could see her confusion turn to fear. Ryan's wife said something, shaking her head, her voice sharp and loud. She didn't care who heard. She was done with the lies. I cracked my window slightly, just in time to hear Vanessa's voice. "Wait, just let me explain." But there was no explanation to give. Ryan's wife shoved past him, stepping inside. There was shouting, overlapping voices, pure chaos. Vanessa's panicked tone, Ryan's weak attempts at damage control, his wife's seething rage. It was everything I wanted. The door suddenly swung open again. Vanessa stepped outside, her face pale, her hands trembling. Her gaze darted around, like she was trying to process what had just happened. Then she saw me. I didn't move. I just stared at her, watching as realization slammed into her like a truck. She knew. She knew I had done this. I could see it in her wide, terrified eyes. For the first time, she wasn't in control anymore. She sprinted toward my car, her heels clicking frantically against the pavement. I let her reach the driver's side window before rolling it down slowly. Her voice was a frantic whisper. "James, please tell me you didn't do this." I looked at her for a long second, then leaned back in my seat, smirking. "Do what, Vanessa?" She inhaled sharply, panic clouding her features. You sent her everything, didn't you? You planned this." I tilted my head. "I don't know what you're talking about. Shouldn't you be inside? Looks like you have some explaining to do." Her hands clenched into fists. "James, listen to me. This isn't—" I cut her off. "Save it, Vanessa." My voice was cold, Steady. Your game is over. You lost. Her breathing was uneven now, her lower lip trembling. Please, please don't do this to us. I laughed. Actually laughed. You think there's still an us after this? Her eyes filled with tears. James, I made a mistake. I exhaled sharply, gripping the steering wheel. A mistake? I repeated. That's funny. Because according to your little notebook, you've been making mistakes for the last 4 years. Her whole body tensed. The color drained from her face. And just like that, she knew exactly how screwed she was. Before she could say another word, Ryan's wife stormed out of the house, her face flushed with fury. You disgusting, pathetic excuse for a human being, she spat at Vanessa. Vanessa flinched. Ryan stumbled after his wife, reaching for her arm, but she yanked away from him. Don't touch me. She turned to me, her expression unreadable. Thank you for sending me everything. I hope you destroy her the same way I'm about to destroy him. I gave her a nod. Trust me. I plan to. She walked straight to her car and drove off without looking back. Vanessa stood there, shaking, staring at the spot where Ryan's wife's car had been. Then she turned back to me. James, please. I rolled up my window. Then I pulled out of the parking spot and drove away. I didn't need to see any more. She had destroyed our marriage. Now, I was going to destroy her life. I got home before she did. I had expected that. She needed time to figure out how she was going to spin this, how she would try to manipulate the situation to her advantage. I was already waiting in the living room when she walked through the door. She hesitated, standing in the doorway like she was afraid to step inside. Good. She should be afraid. I gestured to the couch. Sit. She swallowed hard. James, I said sit. She obeyed. For the first time in our entire marriage, she was the one feeling powerless. I stood, crossing my arms, looking down at her. How long were you planning on lying to me? She looked away. I don't know. 4 years, Vanessa. My voice was sharp, cutting through her pathetic attempt at evasion. 4 years of sneaking around, lying, keeping track of your little game. Her head snapped up. You read my notebook? I scoffed. Of course I did. How else would I know you were treating our marriage like some kind of competition? Tears filled her eyes. I never wanted to hurt you. I laughed. You kept a damn scoreboard of your cheating, Vanessa. You had rules for how to hide your affairs. I leaned in. Tell me, was it fun? Did you enjoy sneaking around, fooling me? She shook her head furiously. No, James, I straightened, taking a deep breath. It doesn't matter anymore. We're done. She let out a choked sob. No, please, I pulled a folder from the coffee table and tossed it onto her lap. She opened it, her fingers shaking. Inside were the divorce papers. I've already spoken to a lawyer, I said calmly. Everything is in motion. I want full custody of the kids. You will move out by the end of the month. Her hands flew to her mouth as she flipped through the pages. No. James, we can fix this. There's nothing left to fix. Tears streamed down her face. I don't have anywhere to go. I smiled coldly. Not my problem. She broke down completely then, sobbing into her hands. I let her. She had 4 years to think about her choices. Now, she could spend the rest of her life regretting them. Vanessa sat there, gripping the divorce papers with trembling hands. She was crying, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no sadness, just cold, calculated focus. She had played her game for 4 years. Now, she was realizing just how badly she had lost. She wiped at her tears, looking up at me like I was supposed to care. James, please don't do this. We can fix this. I cut her off. We can fix this? I let out a sharp, bitter laugh. Vanessa, you haven't cared about we 4 years. She shook her head frantically. That's not true. I love you. I swear. I never stopped loving you. I stared at her, emotionless. Do you even hear yourself? She opened her mouth, but I kept going. You had rules for cheating, Vanessa. Rules. You tracked your little affairs like a game. You kept notes on how well each man satisfied you. And now you want me to believe you love me? I exhaled sharply. You don't even know what love is. She broke down completely then, her body shaking as she buried her face in her hands. The sobs came hard, uncontrolled. But I didn't move. I didn't comfort her. She deserved every second of this. The silence stretched between us. The only sound in the room was her quiet crying. Finally, she looked up at me again. What about the kids? I clenched my jaw. What about them? Her voice cracked. You can't take them from me. I leaned forward. Watch me. Panic spread across her face. James, no. Please. I know I screwed up, but the kids need their mother. I scoffed. Their mother? Their mother is a liar. A manipulator. A woman who would rather spend time in a cheap motel than with her own family. Tears ran down her cheeks as she shook her head. No. I'm still their mother. You can't take them away. I walked to the coffee table, grabbed another folder, and tossed it at her. She picked it up, hesitated, then flipped it open. Her eyes scanned the documents, proof of her affair, records of her hotel visits, text message transcripts, the journal she had so carelessly left behind. Then she reached the final page. A sworn statement from her own father, supporting my full custody claim. She gasped. No, he wouldn't. Oh, but he did, I said, folding my arms. He knows everything, Vanessa. Your entire family does. I made sure of it. She covered her mouth, choking on a sob. I pressed on. You're not losing custody because of me. You're losing them because of you. Because you chose this. Over and over again. This is your fault. She stared at the papers, her hands shaking. She looked completely broken. Good. That night, she tried again. I was in the guest room, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, when I heard the door creak open. Vanessa stood in the doorway, her eyes red and swollen from crying. She was wearing one of my old t-shirts, the way she always did when she wanted to feel close to me. James! Her voice was small, desperate. Can I sleep in here tonight? I turned my head to look at her, expression blank. No. She flinched, but stepped inside anyway. Please, she whispered. I just need to be near you. Vanessa. I sat up slowly, fixing her with a cold stare. Get out. Her breath hitched. James, please. I can't sleep alone. I can't. You should be alone, I said sharply. You deserve to be alone. She crumpled, her hands covering her face as fresh sobs racked her body. I don't want to lose you. I exhaled, feeling nothing but disgust. You lost me the first time you let another man touch you. Her shoulders shook as she nodded, tears falling freely. But I didn't care. I would never care again. The next morning, she tried another approach. I was drinking coffee at the kitchen table when she sat across from me, her voice small, controlled. Can we talk? I didn't look up. We already did. She sighed, rubbing her temples. James, I know I can't undo what I did. I know you're angry, but we don't have to go straight to divorce. Maybe we could. I don't know. Try therapy? I set my coffee down. Are you seriously suggesting therapy? She nodded quickly. Yes. I mean, couples go through hard times. They work through them. I let out a sharp laugh. Hard times? Vanessa, you created this. You chose this. And now you want me to sit in a therapist's office and listen to you justify it? She swallowed, looking down at the table. I don't want to lose my family. I exhaled. You lost your family the second you turned our marriage into a damn game. She whimpered. I wasn't thinking. No, Vanessa. My voice was cold. You were thinking the entire time. You were careful. You had rules. You knew exactly what you were doing. She wiped at her tears. But I never wanted to hurt you. I laughed bitterly. That's the worst part. You didn't care if you hurt me. If you did, you never would have done it. She stared at the table, silent. She knew I was right. The next few days were the same. She cried. She begged. She tried to make excuses. I ignored all of it. I packed my things, moved into the guest room permanently, spent more time with the kids, making sure they felt loved and safe despite the disaster their mother had created. I was no longer arguing with Vanessa. I was just waiting for the final moment when everything would be official. waiting for the day she would have to sign her name on the divorce papers, waiting for her to lose everything. Because she would. And I wouldn't feel the slightest bit sorry for her. Vanessa had spent the last few days in a cycle of desperation, crying, begging, making empty promises she had no intention of keeping. She tried guilt. She tried pleading. She even tried seduction. But none of it worked. I was done with her. She wasn't sorry for what she did. She was sorry she got caught. But sorry wasn't enough. I wasn't going to just divorce her and move on. That would be too easy. She had played her little game for 4 years, sneaking around behind my back, making a joke out of our marriage. Now, it was time for me to play my own game. And I wasn't just going to leave her. I was going to ruin her. April 10 to 6:30 a.m. I set my plan in motion. The first step was financial. Vanessa had always depended on my income. She worked, but her job didn't pay enough for her to survive on her own. Most of our assets were in my name. The house, the cars, the investments, everything that actually mattered. She had assumed that even with the divorce, I would let her walk away with a comfortable settlement. She was wrong. I had already met with my lawyer and adjusted everything. Since I had undeniable proof of her infidelity, she wasn't entitled to anything beyond what the court deemed necessary. Translation? She was about to walk away with nothing. That morning, as she sat across from me at the kitchen table, stirring her coffee with tired, red-rimmed eyes, I casually slid a document across the surface. She hesitated. "What's this?" I leaned back, sipping my own coffee. "A breakdown of the divorce settlement." She frowned, flipping through the pages. I waited for it. The moment she realized, her fingers started shaking. "James, this can't be right." "It's right," I said smoothly. "You don't get the house. You don't get the savings. You'll have minimal spousal support for 6 months, and then that's it." Her breath caught. But we built this life together." I smirked. "Did we?" Tears filled her eyes. "James, I won't be able to afford rent. I'll have nothing." I shrugged. "Not my problem." Her lower lip trembled. "You can't do this." I laughed. "Vanessa, you threw away our marriage for a damn game. Now, you're facing the consequences. Don't like it? Tough." She clenched the papers in her fists, her breathing uneven. "You're really going to do this to me? You did this to yourself." She knew she was screwed, but I wasn't finished yet. April 12 to 3 p.m. The second step was social. Vanessa had spent years carefully maintaining her image. A perfect wife, a loving mother, respectable woman. But I had every intention of tearing that image apart. The first thing I did was send an email. Subject: the truth about my wife. To our close friends, her family, her coworkers. I didn't write a dramatic speech. I didn't exaggerate. I simply attached a collection of screenshots, her text with Ryan, the journal where she tracked her affairs, the undeniable proof that she had spent the last 4 years lying to everyone. Then, I hit send. I didn't have to wait long. Within an hour, my phone was flooded with messages. Friends reaching out in shock. Her own mother calling me, voice thick with anger and shame. Vanessa's boss emailing back, saying they would be reviewing her employment. She had humiliated me for years. Now, I was returning the favor. When Vanessa got home, I was waiting for her. She looked panicked, her phone clutched in her hands. "James, what did you do?" I smirked. "Check your messages?" She swallowed hard, then slowly unlocked her phone. I watched as her face crumbled. One after another, the text came in. "Emily. What the hell, Vanessa? How could you do this?" Her mom. "I'm disgusted. Don't call me for a while." Her boss. "We need to have a conversation about your future with this company." She let out a choked sob. "James, please." I tilted my head. "What's wrong? Don't like the attention?" She shook her head violently. "You had no right." I stood abruptly, slamming my glass down. "No right?" I hissed. "You humiliated me. You made a joke out of our marriage. You destroyed everything we built. And now, what? You expect me to just let you walk away clean?" She whimpered. "I didn't think you'd go this far." I laughed coldly. "Oh, Vanessa, I'm just getting started." April 14 to 10 a.m. The final step was public humiliation. She thought she could still hide from this, that the damage was contained. I made sure it wasn't. That morning, I went to a coffee shop we always visited together. A place where she knew everyone. Old coworkers, mutual friends, people who used to see her as the perfect wife. I took a deep breath, pulled out my phone, and made a public post on social media. After 4 years of lies, deception, and infidelity, I'm officially divorcing my wife. Vanessa turned our marriage into a game, so I made sure she lost. Then, I attached a photo of her little cheating notebook and hit post. It spread fast. People shared it, commented, hundreds of messages. Some people called me petty. Others said she deserved it. But one thing was clear. Vanessa would never escape this. She had destroyed my life. Now, hers was in ruins. And I wasn't done watching her suffer. Vanessa had no idea how much further she could fall. She thought she had already hit rock bottom, but she was wrong. She had lost her reputation, her dignity, and the last shreds of respect from her friends and family. But there was still one thing left, her stability. And I was about to take that away too. April 15 to 8 a.m. Vanessa had been trying to keep it together. Even with the divorce looming, the financial hit, and the social humiliation, she still had her job. It was the last thing tethering her to some sense of normalcy. She clung to it like a lifeline, desperate to believe that she could rebuild after this. She was about to learn otherwise. That morning, she left for work like normal. She had been quiet, barely making eye contact with me. I could see the exhaustion in her face. She wasn't sleeping well, but I didn't care. She deserved every sleepless night. As soon as she was out the door, I made my final move. I already knew that her boss had concerns after the evidence of her affair went public. Companies don't like scandals, especially when it involves an employee using company time to cheat on their spouse. I had made sure they saw everything, the hotel receipts that lined up with supposed client meetings, the text messages arranging rendezvous during work hours, the fact that she had spent more time in bed with Ryan than actually doing her damn job. And now, it was time to finish the job. I picked up the phone and dialed. Hello, this is Mark Winters, HR manager. How can I help you? I smiled. Hi, Mark. My name is James. I believe we spoke via email about Vanessa. There was a pause, then a sigh. Yes, we've been reviewing everything. I understand this is a difficult situation, but we really can't make termination decisions based solely on. Oh, I completely understand, I said smoothly. Which is why I wanted to let you know that Vanessa also falsified expense reports to cover up hotel stays. Silence. I let it sink in before adding, I can send you copies right now. Another long pause. Then, finally, send them over. I hung up and forwarded every last document. An hour later, Vanessa called me. Her voice was trembling. James, I just got fired. I pretended to be shocked. What? Why? They said something about improper use of company resources. She sniffled. I don't understand. I thought I could. I cut her off. That sucks. Silence. She knew. She knew I had done this, but she couldn't even bring herself to say it. She knew she had lost. April 16 to 6 p.m. She was breaking down completely now. The confidence, the arrogance, the twisted sense of control she had once held over our marriage. All of it was gone. She sat on the couch, knees pulled to her chest, staring blankly at the floor. Her phone was next to her, untouched. No texts, no calls. No one wanted anything to do with her anymore. I poured myself a drink and watched her. She was waiting for me to pity her. I wouldn't. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was hoarse. What do I do now? I raised an eyebrow. That's not my problem. Her eyes flickered with desperation. James, please. I don't have a job. I don't have anywhere to go. I took a slow sip of my drink. Not my problem either. Tears welled in her eyes. You can't just throw me out. I smiled. Actually, I can. The house is mine. She let out a choked sob. I never thought you'd do this to me. I laughed bitterly. And I never thought you'd cheat on me for 4 years. Funny how that works. She buried her face in her hands, sobbing. I have nothing left. I nodded. Sounds about right. She looked up at me, desperate, pleading. Don't do this. Please. I'll do anything. I set my glass down and leaned forward, meeting her gaze. Then pack your shit and get out. Her whole body trembled, but she didn't argue. She knew it was over. April 18 to 10 a.m. Vanessa packed her bags in silence. She didn't beg anymore. She didn't cry. She just accepted it. She was homeless, jobless, and completely alone. She had spent 4 years treating our marriage like a game. Now, she had lost everything. I stood by the door as she dragged her suitcases toward the exit. She hesitated, turning to look at me one last time. I know you'll never forgive me, she whispered. I stared at her. You're right. Her lip quivered. I loved you. I smirked. No, Vanessa. You loved cheating on me. She had no response. She opened the door. And she was gone. Vanessa was gone. The house felt different, quieter, lighter, like the poison had finally been drained from it. She had packed up what little dignity she had left and walked out that door, knowing she had nowhere to go, no one to turn to, and nothing to rebuild her life with. But I wasn't thinking about her anymore. I was thinking about myself. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. No more fake smiles at the dinner table while she texted her lover under the table. No more lies, no more gaslighting, no more wondering if the woman sleeping beside me had spent her lunch break in someone else's bed. She was gone, and I had one. But I wasn't finished yet. April 20 to 11 a.m. I took my time adjusting to my new life. I cleaned the house, getting rid of everything that reminded me of her. I deleted our old photos, trashed her leftover clothes, changed the locks, and reset my entire world. Then, I updated the divorce attorney. With Vanessa out of the house, I filed for an immediate motion to finalize the settlement. There was no way she could contest it now. Not without a job, not without money, and certainly not after I had buried her social standing beyond repair. Within days, the paperwork was finalized. It was official. Vanessa was legally nothing to me anymore. April 22 to 6:30 p.m. I heard from Emily first. She called me, her voice hesitant. Hey, have you seen Vanessa? I frowned. Why would I? Emily sighed. I don't know. I saw her today. She looked bad. I leaned back in my chair. Define bad. She was at a coffee shop, sitting alone, looking like she hadn't slept in weeks. She didn't even notice me at first. I sat down, tried to talk to her, but Emily hesitated. James, she's falling apart. I didn't respond. She's been couch surfing, staying with random acquaintances. No job, no support. No one wants to be around her after everything that came out. I sipped my drink. That's not my problem. Emily sighed. I know. I never thought she'd fall this hard. I did, and I had made sure of it. April 25, 3 p.m. The last time I saw Vanessa, she looked like a ghost of herself. She was sitting on a park bench, staring at nothing, a half-empty coffee cup in her hands. Her once perfect hair was unkempt, her clothes wrinkled, her entire presence dull and lifeless. For 4 years, she had been on top of the world, playing her sick little game, believing she was untouchable. Now, she had nothing. I didn't approach her. I didn't need to. I had done enough. She had built her own downfall, brick by brick, and I had simply lit the match that burned it all down. I walked past her without a word. She never even looked up. Vanessa was nothing but a memory now, a ghost of my past, lingering in the wreckage she had created for herself. But I had no reason to think about her anymore. My life was finally mine again, and for the first time in years, I wasn't waking up with a sense of dread. I wasn't second-guessing my every move, wondering if I was the fool in my own marriage. No, that chapter was closed. I had one, and now it was time to rebuild. May 1 to 7 a.m. I woke up early, stretching as sunlight poured through the window. My mornings felt different now, lighter, peaceful. I didn't have to pretend anymore. I didn't have to force smiles over breakfast while my wife plotted her next move behind my back. I got up, made coffee, and sat outside on the porch, watching the quiet world come to life. I had control again. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for betrayal. It was over, and I was free. May 3 to 6:45 p.m. I went out with friends that night, something I hadn't done in far too long. When you're married to someone like Vanessa, you don't realize how much of yourself you lose. I had spent years making excuses to stay home, trying to be the perfect husband, making sure she was happy. Meanwhile, she was out there living her double life without a second thought. Not anymore. The bar was lively, filled with energy, laughter, and conversation. I sat with my friends, catching up, talking about things that had nothing to do with betrayal, divorce, or revenge. For the first time in a long time, I felt normal. And then, I saw her. Not Vanessa. Someone new. She was sitting alone at the bar, sipping a drink, flipping through a book. She looked calm, unaffected by the noise around her, completely in her own world. I almost didn't approach. But then, she glanced up, caught me staring, and smiled. And just like that, I knew. It was time to move forward. Vanessa had taken years of my life, but she hadn't destroyed me. I had one, and I wasn't looking back.